Hey, soft and sweet, and this is Adrianne from the Black Women in Europe podcast, your mindfulness activist.
Hey, it's your girl Kate Pearl, your truth teller and healer for justice over here in the UK, and this is our season of healing.
Of healing racial trauma. We were supposed to do that together, people, but that's as close as we could get. Yeah. So stick around.
Blooper reel.
Ever wonder why Black people don't speak up when we experience racism? Spoiler alert, it's not because we're shy. It's because somehow we always get punished for telling the truth. Wild. That part. Here's the thing. We're told to speak out. Every time there's an issue, someone always says, just say something. But when we do, suddenly we're too angry or too sensitive. Because apparently, white discomfort is way more important than our basic human rights. Weird how that works, right? Because here's the truth. Every time we speak up, we risk our jobs, our safety, our mental health, and don't even get me started on the emotional labour of it all. And for what? For white people to act shocked or oppressed when they're called out? Nah. So when we stop explaining, when we stop teaching, suddenly it's, why are you so angry? Make it make sense. Black people are done teaching. We've been explaining this for decades. Now it's your turn to listen, learn, and act. Hit that follow button, because if you're not listening, you're missing out. This is where the real conversation starts. Don't get left behind.
Okay, now, thanks for that, Kate Pearls. So let's talk about why Black women shouldn't have to educate everyone. I'm exhausted just reading the title of our episode.
Yes. I'm just putting it out there. I think we're exhausted doing it. So to get straight into it, and because I think it's time to, we're talking about Black women, educating people pretty much constantly. But really, what I want to do with this one is kind of bust open the strong Black woman myth and kind of the emotional labor and kind of the expectation via this myth that Black women are always strong or always the strong one. And when I say strong, I'm not saying we're not, and I actually love that about us, but what I'm talking about is kind of the expectation. I don't just mean resilient, and I don't mean capable. I mean this kind of idea that we're invincible and that we're always the ones carrying the weight of the world on our backs. So this strong Black woman label, whether it's coming out of mouths or if it's in minds, well, probably more so that it's in minds and kind of perceptions, it's dangerous and it's dehumanizing. And I just, how many of us have been told, again, I don't care if the words didn't come out, that there have been another way of the translation happening, that we're so strong or that we're the ones to handle it. But deep down, we know that it's not about being strong all the time. It's about survival. But even in survival, we deserve rest.
I'm here for that. You hear it all the time. It's a stereotype and it's an expectation, and it's, to me, an extra layer of what women in general are expected to do. Yeah, we're supposed to carry the weight in our families or whatever, but Black women, we carry the whole world.
Yes, exactly. And this idea that we're always have to be strong is kind of rooted in the myth of, I'm going straight back to what you say, kind of like we're supposed to be superwoman. And it looks different because it has similarities, but we're taught to be the rock for literally everyone else, like everyone. And, to keep it together when the world's on fire. But here's the thing, when you're constantly being strong, you're never allowed to be vulnerable. And you're never allowed to break down. And that's what this myth does. It strips us of our humanity, just gone. And so, this can play out in the world in many different ways. I'm going to use a UK example. Black women often face the pressure to embody this strength, in particular when it comes to activism. Example would be Doreen Lawrence, the mother of Stephen Lawrence, whose fight for justice. It became an international symbol of resilience and strength. I don't think I can turn a corner of the globe that didn't at least have some idea of this story. But while her strength is undeniably powerful, it's often forgotten that she was shouldering an immense emotional burden, one that she never asked for.
No, okay, just briefly, I know her son was killed. But can you just briefly, for someone who may not have heard this tragic story?
So just going to give you the basics of it. 1993 is when it happened. Stephen Lawrence was an 18-year-old black boy, London. I can't remember where exactly, but somewhere in London. And he actually got murdered by 5 racists who all ganged up, kicked the shit out of him until there were no breath left whatsoever. It was absolutely awful. And it's one of the first, I suppose, like for me, I mean, I was like 8 or 9 at the time. I remember a lot of the headlines like it were yesterday. And for me, it was probably the first one that really, I knew this stuff was going on, but it was the first one that really sucker punched me, because I'd never quite heard anything like it, you know? So yeah, and Doreen, to this day, like, these guys have not all come to justice, you know, little by little, but just, it's still going on. She's still fighting now.
Wow, mothers aren't going to get
right.
That's one example. And as you say, mothers isn't going to give up, but she's got to fight for justice, plus the emotional burden of your son being murdered.
Yes.
What that does to your family. You still have to keep your family together.
Yeah.
She's become a symbol of hope and resilience in the fight for justice for a lot of people. I think he was at a bus stop, wasn't he?
He was
at a bus stop or something.
He was at a bus stop, and he was
minding your own business. Home.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing nothing, waiting at the bus stop while black.
Yeah.
So let me just, I don't know, CCTV camera is big in the UK. Was any of this caught on camera so they could see who did it?
I'm not 100% sure on how much of this they caught, but I do remember that there were photos shared in the papers, as in what existing footage is around. And definitely 30 years ago, it wouldn't have been what it is now. And it was in the dark. This was one of the troubles they had. But it was absolutely disgusting how it's played out, because
it is. And sorry to make you live it up again, but just to let you know that these are the type of things, and this isn't. Yeah. You don't. It's not uncommon, is what I want to say. Black mothers mourning their children dying young by violent means. So she's become a symbol in the UK for, what were you saying? You brought her name up because she's just one of the people fighting for justice.
Yeah, definitely. And we're talking about the weight that, everybody, but black women specifically, not to the exclusion of anyone else, but it's just another prime example, and a sadly very public one.
Very public. And I know a couple of times it's happened in the States. These mothers have even gone on to run for public office.
Yeah.
Or create organizations, charitable organizations. Again, carrying the weight of the world, but it's even amplified when it's your own child.
Yes.
So what a burden. And you know what? Do black mothers in the UK have this talk with their children about you're black and like how to deal with the police and what not to do and how to react, how to act in public? Basically, we have to get taught, like, I know in the States, for example, if the police pull you over, you want to keep your hands visible, no sudden moves, or, all kinds of things that white people don't think about. Yeah. Is that the same in the UK?
Absolutely. You need, sad but true, you need to have the chat, and you need to have it several times. And also a lot of it depends on where you are, but a lot of the time you will be, you'll be growing up and you'll probably have quite a lot of white quote unquote friends. So it will be that kind of like, maybe they could get away with that chat, but you absolutely can't. You will be picked out, and you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, so it's funny you say the chat. We call it the chat too. So maybe that's a global thing. The chat.
It's a global thing.
Yeah. So now this is one of the, Black women having to educate everybody. We do that with, we'll educate, our children how to behave. Try to, when does it get to the point, I don't want to move you along, but this just resonates so much with me. But please keep going, because Doreen, I didn't know her name. I knew her son's name. So thank you for saying her name.
No, absolutely. Well, I was going to get into that in a moment about, the pressure to always be the educator, and God, if this where do we draw the line, right? And it's an ongoing conversation. So I don't think we've found it yet. But a couple of things to drop in real quickly. I like my studies, So we've got the Runnymede Trust came back for a 2021. I love it, especially when they're recent and they're showing us exactly the type of stuff we're talking about here. But it revealed that Black women are more likely to be tasked with carrying the emotional labour roles. Like, I need to tell us that, but for those that might have thought, is it just me again? And particularly in public and professional settings. Yet, despite the intense emotional labour we undertake, we're rarely given the support, rarely if ever, given the support we actually need. And much of this labour is invisible. So it's, just to sit with that for a moment, the emotional labour, it doesn't just make us tired. It's an ongoing, usually unpaid and often unacknowledged burden. Yeah. So love that you brought that up there, the pressure to always be the educator, right? So
okay, wait a minute. You said usually unpaid. Who do you know is getting paid for this? And let me sign up. Because I've been doing this as like volunteer work. I mean, mandatory volunteer work or whatever. But yeah, but there are sisters that are doing. I know a sister in Germany, American father in German. Maybe both her parents American, but grew up in Germany. They're musicians. She does like a how to be an ally workshop. And I have, for a couple of women's clubs that I'm in, had her come on and do, because I'm like, and she did it for free. Yeah. Because, like these American women's clubs, we don't have budgets, but she's like, I know the need, I'll give you a little bit. And then, I'm like, yeah, hopefully some of these clubs will hire you. Because I've been in volunteer organizations where we've had like training and it was crap. So when you say people get paid, there are people who can help you learn all this stuff that we're not doing anymore for free.
Yes, exactly.
Just to let you know, there's do they do that in the UK? Do they call it allyship and these ally work? It's basically how not to be a racist. They call it how to be an ally.
Yeah, or how to be an active anti-racist. That's a pretty big one over here.
Is it get traction?
Yeah, do you know what? I believe so. And there's a lot of people that I'm connected with that they're doing workshops and they're charging for them and they're getting paid. So
good. Because when people pay for it, they take it seriously.
Exactly.
And nobody wants, and that appeals to a lot of people that are quick to say, I'm not a racist.
Yeah.
But won't, aren't necessarily an ally. So I like that it's called how to be an anti-racist or something, because then they're like, well, I know how, that's clever. Okay. Because just calling people what it is. See, we're too nice saying how to be an ally. It basically needs to be stop being racist.
Basically, stop being racist, and here's how. Yeah.
And here's how.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a problem. That's
by the way.
So I was gonna say we're gonna develop that for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first. It'll be Kate Kroll's How Not to Be a Racist coming up soon.
Love it. So the educator role, we'll drop into that. I mean, we're in it already, but how many times, going back to what we just talked about, have you been approached to teach about race or racial trauma, whether it's at work or in social settings, or on social media? Like, we're often put in the position to educate others about our experiences, whether we have the energy or we don't. And the thing is, when we do it, it's not just about explaining things. It is emotional labor, and it's teaching while carrying the weight of centuries of pain and of collective trauma. So, I do put myself out there. I teach on this stuff. That is mostly what my TikTok account's about and my work. But I've had people slide into my DMs, like outside of all this free content, asking to understand more about racism, about Black British history, and about why certain words are offensive. Others malfunction in the comment section. And here's the thing, I get it, and I'm definitely not poo-pooing it, but what people often forget is that explaining these things, it's not just a neutral task. It involves emotional investment, especially when you're explaining to people who don't always listen or who are committed to just misunderstanding and arguing, or worse, act like they've just discovered how damaging certain things are.
And that's what I was just about to say. You take the risk of going through all that emotional work to tell somebody, and then it doesn't even land. They don't even want to hear it. They just want to fight about it. They want to prove that you're wrong. It's like you can't necessarily weed these people out before you do all that work to try to educate people. Like you said, they slide in the DMs.
Yeah. And then there's the guilt. I mean, I felt it earlier. I don't give a shit now, but I know it's sometimes something people can carry is there's a bit of guilt. If you've ever felt guilty for not wanting to educate someone or felt guilty for not giving them the emotional energy, definitely, it doesn't, many of us don't, but still a lot of us do. Giving them the
No, I
energy
know what you
expect
mean.
free. Yeah. Because it just becomes so ingrained. Like suddenly you're the bad guy just for saying no. I don't have the mental capacity to teach you today, but it's not that we don't care. It's that we're not responsible for carrying the fucking burden of education for everyone else,
Yeah, as if, you don't have a right to say. People get indignant.
Yeah. Offended. You said no.
Yeah, that you said no because we're supposed to do everything, right? Yeah. So for you to say no under any circumstances for whatever
any reason
request. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then this again, another little study for us, according to a 2021 study from the Black Women's Health and Wellbeing Project, Black women are consistently expected to take on the role of emotional educators, whether in the workplace or in their personal lives. And this pressure to constantly explain complex issues and draw diagrams related to race, identity, and trauma, especially when people have actually got the emotional capacity and probably the devices to look things up themselves, it can be emotionally draining and really damaging along with it. So the reality is this constant demand for emotional labor and the expectation to educate and carry that weight not only leads to burnout, but it also reinforces the myth that Black women are a universal resource for others learning. And when we give so much of ourselves to educate others, we often forget that we too need to be educated, but about our needs, about our well-being, and our emotional boundaries. And that can get lost under all of those expectations and pieces of conditioning, and there's so many different terms for it.
Yeah, boundaries, that really spoke to me. That's what we're going to do something in the mindfulness part about boundaries, because that isn't something we're taught, is it? And I want to say we don't have boundaries, and then just womanhood in general.
Yeah.
You're never supposed to say no. And there's always like what you can't do, and then it's very complex. And then Black women, one time we can do everything, and then at the same time, you're not qualified to do anything. At one point we can do it, and then, so you've got all that dichotomy and stuff going on in the constant demand. So boundaries, so important. We're going to do that at the end for mindfulness. Thank you. I think that's so important, boundaries. And we need to teach our children and definitely our daughters boundaries, how to set boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. And also crucially, how to maintain them, how to stand 10 toes down in those boundaries. However, it is hard, but you really have to. So just, maybe for anyone that's listening right now, this could probably validate some things for you, because emotional labor, it is real and it's absolutely exhausting. So let's talk about it a bit more, because it's a real thing. It's often overlooked. Emotional labor, it's the effort we put into managing and regulating emotions, just for a broad definition. And that's both our own and the emotions of others. So in the case of racial trauma, it's not just about explaining systemic oppression or racism. It's about carrying that emotional weight for others, constantly managing people's reactions, and trying to explain why things hurt us while we're also trying to heal. Yeah?
Yeah. Yes, because as you say, we feel the weight of what's happening to us, but also to our sisters and brothers around us.
Yes.
You're in a space, and in Europe, not all places in Europe, you're easily visible. And if you see something, and it's so many levels, from the micro to the what is it? Micro to the macro aggressions, to how the person in front of you gets good service, and when it's your time, you don't get the good service.
Yeah.
And you can see it happening to somebody else, or someone just being impolite or rude. Do you help? Do you step in? I don't want to say it happens every day you go out, but every day you go out, you're looking for it.
Yeah. And it's happened enough to the point where we're, part of that emotional labor again. We're on guard. We're on guard.
We're constantly on guard. Yeah, hypervigilant. I was going to say walking on the eggshells. a lot of the times, and that puts us in too much of a state of chronic stress.
And like
We're
we
not
talked
supposed to
about
be
the
that
cortisol
elevated.
levels. Yeah, those spikes. We talked
It
about running from
damages.
the lion, didn't we? But when you're there every
Exactly.
day because of these experiences, it damages. You're absolutely right. And I think I'm probably putting a few stories together. I am putting a few stories together in one, but for me, it really does hit hard during times of quote unquote public tragedy, or when dealing with institutional racism in the workplace. I'm sure many listening can relate to that. But there were times when I felt like I couldn't even process my own grief or pain because I was busy helping others process theirs. And I was kind of the one that loads of people turn to for answers, which it feels a bit like a compliment. That's nice and all that, but for all the reassurance and for all the solutions, and let's not. Well, we will, but I mean, let's not even talk about how I felt when people were surprised that I need a break from it, and I'm having to say no. Like we talked about, say no, but then my reaction to the fact that people weren't happy about the fact that I'm saying no, and friend groups. That's been another place I've noticed it massively. No shade, but God forbid you come in with a problem of any type, and you'll see that you will see the differences between how yours are received and what's expected of you when another member of the group lives are on fire. It's an entirely different thing, and you don't want to resent that shit. But I know I did. It was a huge part of my healing. I resented that for a long time. So
good that you recognize it, though. You can work
yes,
on it.
yeah, exactly. And the thing, going deeper, the thing about emotional labor, we're often expected to shoulder it silently. Yeah, so kind of very much what I just said. When we're called to be strong, we're expected to do so without complaint, without recognition, and certainly without any expectation of support or even reciprocity. We're seen as the ones who can handle it all until we can't. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is related, but post the most recent presidential election in the States, where America decided not to vote for a Black woman, it was such a gut punch for Black women.
Yeah.
Our party, I guess, in general, but for Black women, I took that, and then you start to see the aftermath of things that are happening. And I'm in some groups where white women are like, "Oh, this is so horrible," and this is happening, and I let it go for like weeks and stuff, and didn't say anything. And I was like, "Y'all were wringing your hands about X, Y, and Z." I was like, "Black people have been feeling like this since we got off the slave ships."
Yeah.
If y'all would have been worrying about my basic human rights and doing the work that every single human rights gain in the United States of America has come from Black people pushing stuff forward, and everybody benefits. There's nothing that helps Black people that's exclusive to helping Black people in the United States. None of the constitutional amendments that we've gotten or any of the laws. It's so while y'all are wringing your hands, I was like, we're tired. Just like you said, we're not doing it. I was like, we're tired. I'm like, for 300 years, we've been ringing the bell, doing the work. Black women were marching for suffragette rights when we knew we couldn't even vote. But we were out there in the street pushing it forward for women, hoping that one day we were going to get our turn.
Yeah.
So this to me is related to all that emotional weight. They wanted me to be in that room and hold space for them while they're wringing their hands about, and they're going to take away the woman's right to vote and this. And I'm like, they've been messing with Black people's right to vote since the 1964 Voting Rights Act expired. 4 years later, where were y'all pushing that forward? Then your vote wouldn't be on the line. So it's a little bit kind of related, like they want me to hold for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I did it for a little while, and I was like, and that totally shifted the thing. They stopped. I was like, you go cry somewhere else.
Cry somewhere else. Yeah. Well, yeah. Respectfully, we're done over here.
And I was like, and I have to give you a brief history of, civil rights advancement in the United States. Again, that's like I was forced to educate them to say why I wasn't going to join into this latest round of boo-hoo.
Yeah.
When white women, ever since, I know I'm going off the rails, but
no, you're on
a white woman and women who stood up when American women were so close to getting the Equal Rights Amendment passed, which would just make every woman in the Constitution is equal to every man. That's a basic way to me to say it. Right now, it's like that. For example, I don't know how it was in the UK, but in the 70s, it wasn't until the 70s that women could have a credit card in their own name, first of all. So just in your own name. So if your dad didn't get it for you or your husband, so that was just an advance in the 1970s that women can have their credit in your own name, your own freaking money, right? But then we were going to get the Equal Rights Amendment, and there was some white woman in some movement was like, no, we don't want that. So they got women's rights halted. So I'm like, if you white women in here wringing your hands, would have been talking to these other white women that don't even want y'all to have equal rights. Upset now. I know I'm going off the rails, but I have a little bit of patience because these people that want you to educate are the same people that, like you said, you can do your own work. But if they did civil justice work, there wouldn't be any need for this education in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely different. We would be operating from a different place.
Yeah, and so much of this is down to the fact that they're not doing that work. just to say it.
Many levels, yeah. Like I know I kind of got off the path, but they're not on the front lines of social justice. Not all of them, but not enough of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially, they're not talking to their sisters who, in secret, vote against their own interests, which is definitely against my interests. You know, I don't know. I mean, I know I've been in the UK. You've had a lot of elections, but I don't know if your elections ever come down to the craziness has gotten in the States where you're voting against your best interest. I know there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I know you all had a brown prime minister. And I don't know if you all had hopes for a more equal Britain. But I want to know more about this anti-racist thing and if it's working, because it's forcing people to do the education, their own work. But too many people aren't doing it.
There's still loads. Yeah, loads of people not doing it. And again, like I do at this point. I don't see the reasoning. I don't see the excuses. I think I'm going to say it. I think it is straight lazy in a lot of cases because you can't, like you say, you boohoo somewhere else earlier, right? After all that time, after all that labour, and just kind of speaking to brick walls a lot of the time because they're still not doing the work. I think it's the expectation. We've done it for centuries. We were forced to do it for a long time. That is so ingrained in, and it's definitely a psyche thing at this point, you know. So the why, honestly, the work has got to come from them, and also the reasoning. They're going to need to know their own reasons for not doing it. But I think most will never be comfortable actually being honest about that, you know.
Can you give a reason for why they should? Because I know when I lived in Britain, there were some Brits that said there's no racism in the UK. It's all in the US.
Yeah.
But I know that Brits like to bully Americans, and I was an easy target, the only one in the village, and the only Black. So, you know, and I'm like, please, giving them notes to all these organizations in the UK. I'm like, well, what are they doing? You know, why is this? But why would anybody in 2025 not want to be on the right side of racism in the UK or anywhere in the world?
Yeah, like
what's the advantage?
Well, this is it. I mean, I can't actually see an advantage to that, and I don't think it would matter, honestly, what side I'm sitting on. I don't actually see an advantage to that. And then I don't know your side, Adrianne. Obviously, fill us in, but a lot of the political unrest right now, especially with the Starmer's recent island of strangers approach. They're still blaming immigrants, even though they're not even going out a lot of the time to work and go and get the qualifications. And there was a recent video went out on TikTok. Actually, I don't know the name of the guy, but he stood there chatting to this woman on a news show, whinging about immigrants and being the reason for him not getting jobs. But the reason he's not getting jobs is actually because of his criminal record, which is attached to paedophilia. So they will work so much harder, respectfully, on all the excuses whoever sends to not actually do the work, but then go blaming Black and brown people, you know. So
very easy to do, and it's very surprising that people still buy into this narrative.
Yeah, but they do. Yeah.
And I don't know, and I don't know enough about human psychology, but people would like to have somebody to look down on, I guess. And in
Yes.
this day and age, it's the immigrant.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of fear about us, quote unquote, getting revenge. But I just think like lots of narrative going around about this now. And obviously the more we've got social media, the more people tell on themselves. Lots of fear about us getting revenge, but like generally speaking, we're not them. Stop fucking gaslighting. Like,
yeah, I don't even get that revenge how and for what. But yeah, I British and American society, a lot in common, a lot completely different. And I just do know that I know Britain's a very class society. America tries not to be. We have the rich and the poor, but we don't have titles like you do, like aristocracy and then all those other things, which come with certain privileges and come with certain expectations. Like we don't come from America's not a country that, like the Brits, you can say you're not like us. Well, I'm not an aristocrat, so I can never, America, everything's attainable. Look at who we got in the White House. It was attainable. You're not gonna. It's not everybody can be sitting in Buckingham Palace. You can marry into it.
Yeah.
Right, but you're not going to be. So we've got that. So I think the people that have always been on the bottom of the totem pole in British society, the ones that will never have titles, the ones that will never go to Cambridge, the ones that will never go to public school, the ones that are never going to work. I forget what your Wall Street's called, but in the financial district, I should say. The ones that are always going to be like doing the very necessary jobs, like handling garbage.
Blue collars. Yeah.
Blue collars. Ask the people in Birmingham how important it is for people to handle my garbage, my trash. Right? So I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. A lot of times, Black people have been relegated to jobs like that somebody didn't want to do, but very important. Cleaning up your school, dishing out the food in the lunch line. I'm starting to think, and I don't know if Nigel Farage or who really tapped into it. Those people are like, well, the immigrants are why we're never going to get anywhere. It's like you weren't going to get anywhere anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're trapped in British system. You were always going to be the low of the low. Yeah. So then if the immigrants can be the lower of the lowest, they're elevated.
Yeah.
A little bit. And I know when I moved to California, when Black people were calling Mexicans wetbacks and stuff, I was like, wait a minute, I don't even know what that means, first of all, but I know it doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
That just doesn't. And then they're like, oh, because, when they immigrated over the Rio Grande River and water, I was like, okay, you know what? That shit's just wrong. And you're not cool if you're calling Mexicans wetbacks. Yeah. So even the Black people in California were glad that they had somebody to look down on. And it was the Mexicans. So that's why I think it was a psychological thing. And and I can remember all the little
mind to go looking for something like that, to call someone else, to look down your noses at them. Yeah, it's got to be.
I was shocked with my people because we didn't do that on the West Coast, at least not that East Coast where I'm from at that time. So I was like, wow. And from LA, they turned their grass into dirt. This is Black people telling me that. I was like, whoa, okay. Either you're going to change that. We got to talk about that. Why would you even say that? Lump them all. Or you're not my people.
Yeah.
So I noticed that. So there are a lot of Black people. I don't know how many. Too many in the States. Maybe the 8%, 92% voted for Harris. 8% didn't. So they say. So maybe it's the 8% of my people in the States. They're not my people, but Black people that are like looking down on the immigrants and thinking it's okay. But when you do that, that means our Haitian brothers and sisters too. Black people in South America, Latin America, we all over, we just like the Canadians, because they're supposedly white. They're Black Canadians, so it gets very complicated when you say the immigrant. Who's the immigrant? And
exactly.
Except for the First Nationals, the natives in the States were all immigrants, except for the slaves. We were chattel. We didn't decide in the early forms to come over.
No, exactly. And got scattered.
I got scattered.
Scattered tribes.
Scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me go off the rails again. But I want to say that I don't want my people looking down on immigrants either. No. Our community. And sometimes that's good for us. Not good, but I can see, because when we're getting pushed down so much, and getting all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a release or relief to think that there's even someone more despised than me, and it's easy to give up on those people.
Yeah, but it's not a healthy way to go, and it's not even a helpful way to go, like for anyone.
It's not. So if you see yourself doing that, don't blame yourself. Be kind and say, I can do better. I'm getting caught up in the anti-immigrant thing.
Examine that, like introspect maybe, but yeah, you don't need to kick yourself, because we can also see it. And then, but yeah, we're packing things like that. Emotional labor, again, you can be just like a ticking time bomb a lot of the time, but no, we don't do that. It's not good. So yeah, I mean, impact on mental and physical health, this massive, melting pot, and these daily experience, the hidden, like I suppose the hidden cost, what happens when we don't address emotional labor. You can go and take things out on others. And it's not a great way to go. It impacts our mental health in ways that are often invisible, because we can start to feel overwhelmed, disconnected. I did mention resentful earlier. I'm gonna mention it again. And even numb, because the constant pressure to be strong under all of that, while carrying the emotional weight of the world, can actually make us feel like we're losing ourselves and our actual fucking minds. And you start to question, who am I when I'm not taking care of everyone else? And that's where that other stuff can boil up.
Well, yeah, because it's tied into your identity, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. And it's also it's definitely not, it's not an individual problem. It is a collective issue. I was going to say Black women in the UK. I'm sure globally, but I do know for a fact over here, especially in communities that have faced historical trauma, often go with undiagnosed mental health issues. So that's dangerous, because they've internalized the expectation of being a strong one. And then there's also the issue of cultural stigma attached to mental health, often in Black communities, which can make it even harder for us to seek help or even acknowledge that we need it. Yeah.
Yeah. There are two young women that are changing that. And I'm sure you know them. Hopefully I've heard of them. Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka. If I said her name right, by Simone, Biles is the most decorated female gymnast, Olympian. And she talks openly about her mental health, the need to take care of it, having had problems with it, and seeing her therapist like every week, every day, or whatever. She was like, oh, my therapist, she come with her to the Paris Olympics, or let her call her early because of the time difference or whatever. So very visible, strong athlete, number one. And Naomi Osaka, her mother's Japanese, her father's Haitian. And she at one time was a very high ranking tennis player. And she even said, or stopped giving interviews after a match. She said, because it impacts my mental health in a negative way. And she even withdrew from some high level tennis tournaments, citing that she was putting her mental health above everything else. So I find that that's very brave.
Yeah.
Two women at the top of their game in single, not team sports, individual sports. So talk about the pressure. You can't say my team, we let us say it's you if you fail, right? Not even you and your coach, because it's you. So by them coming, so I wanted to segue and hopefully give someone encouragement for all the reasons you said. It's a stigma in our community to get mental health, to even talk about it. And especially for women. I mean, we tell our boys don't cry. We don't want to see our women crying and be like, because they're supposed to be strong. We scare people if we're crying, because if she's crying, what's going to happen to us?
Well, because it's that much of an anomaly to even see, for these exact reasons. Yeah. And it's I love what you shared about Simone there as well, because it's not just the mind, and hats off to her as well, because it's not just the mind that suffers, it is the body too, and there's a lot of strength in being able to recognize and to say, look, you know what, my mental health has got to be a priority here. And the constant stress, the emotional exhaustion, it can also lead to physical manifestations. We've absolutely touched on this previous episodes, I'm sure we will have many more, but chronic pain, digestive issues, heartaches, even heart disease, diabetes links as well. And a study by Mind, this is a leading UK mental health charity, in 2022, found that Black women in the UK experience physical symptoms related to emotional labour, which are often dismissed by healthcare professionals. I'd be very interested to see what that looks like as a global stat or in different parts of the world, because our bodies are literally carrying the weight of that emotional labour, and it's showing up in ways that you can ignore for a time, I guess, but it's not sustainable. Not if you want better outcomes.
No, and I unfortunately, in the U.S., Black women are at the top of the charts for high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, these chronic illnesses that are a result of being in a state of chronic stress. As you said, we're unfortunately misrepresented. Yeah, we're misrepresented. And I think we touched on this before too. You know, a lot of the healthcare providers overlook or ignore your symptoms, or when you report them, because we're supposed. What the studies revealed that people think we have a higher level of tolerance for pain or whatever. And
yeah, well, they did. A lot of this comes from experimentation, going right back to slave times, because they were experimenting on Black women's bodies for all kinds of things. They were definitely the men too, but I know I've read more on Black women. And I suppose another prime example. I don't know the name of the lady, but the one that's brain dead on life support right now with the impregnation.
I don't know her story. Something's going on now.
Well, yeah, there's something going on right now. I haven't got all the details, but it's absolutely diabolical. And
where?
It's in the States somewhere. Yeah.
So is it a Black woman?
It's a Black woman.
Because they can't abort her baby or something because of abortion laws?
Something like that, yeah. And it's, she's on support that the baby's probably in trouble, but it's also turned out to be an experiment. So,
oh gosh.
But this has been going on for a time. And a lot of that stuff, like you said, about Black women being expected to and seen as they've got higher threshold for pain, this is dating back centuries as to how much we're talking in terms of collateral damage for that reason. So yeah, it's awful. But I think, the next one, earlier on, boundaries. I love that you said it, because I want to kind of leave us with expand a bit and give us a loving permission slip, I guess. And this is much for me and Adrianne. I think even if you are on it with these, it's also maintenance, because it's not like the conditioning around us having these has stopped. It's something that's very much not expected, and people are disappointed. But we'll talk about boundaries, because one of the most important things and best things we can do for us ever is protect our energy. Yeah. The catch, we've sort of gone around it now. We've been socialized to believe that setting boundaries makes us difficult, unfriendly, uncompassionate. People don't like hearing no out of us. But that's a lie. Setting boundaries, it's an act of self-care, also self-defense, and it's something that we all deserve. So, for me, learning to say no was life-changing. I weren't used to it, and it took me a while. But I had to unlearn the belief that I had to be available to everyone and everything at all times. And there was a point where I was saying yes to pretty much every request, whether it was to educate, to listen, to take on someone else's emotional burden. And it wasn't until I really hit burnout that I realized I had to reclaim my energy. And it got to really unhealthy levels. The boundaries, they don't just have to be big life-altering decisions. They can actually be small things too. So it's telling your friends, I'm not emotionally available right now. Whatever words you've got for that, tell them no. Or telling your colleague, I can't explain this to you today, but I'll send you some resources. If you're feeling going that way, it's just a way you can start setting gentle ones. And it's okay to step back to say, I need a moment for myself. Yeah, it's not only okay to protect your peace, it's absolutely vital that you do, and your energy with it. And when we say no, we're not rejecting people, or sometimes we are, but we're not really rejecting people. We're actually rejecting the expectation that we should always be the strong one, or the yes woman, or things like that. And we're taking back our agency, crucially, our time, yes, because that's valuable, and our emotional well-being. Saying no is empowering. It's freedom, and it's how you say no, and you take your energy back, because you need that at the end of the day. And the beginning and middle.
I made no my word of the year. What was it, 2021? And I've kept it ever since.
Good.
And as you say, you need maintenance. And even though I made it my word, I didn't say no to everything, but you start saying no more often. And to the point now where I'm like, yeah, I don't have to do that.
Yeah, good.
And then, you couple it with, I've seen a lot of ways, because people are like, how do I say no? I saw one explanation. And of course, it's no 100% rule, because you could be feeling bad that day. Maybe don't make any decisions when you feel bad for whatever reason, under the weather, off your game mentally, whatever. Maybe don't do anything. But otherwise, if somebody asks you to do something, if your initial reaction isn't just like an enthusiastic yes, you should probably say no.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it. And then another way I saw a sister explain, I don't know if how many criteria, but is it going to help me grow? Well, I can't remember, is it going to earn me money? But I remember that even if you want to say yes, she was like, okay, let's break it down even further. Yeah. And again, is it gonna grow? Is it gonna help someone else grow? You could individually make your own list for that.
Yeah. But it's
because
good.
you could have, say, a short list of people that you always want to help. Right. Because you can, and they'll be the first ones that when you say, oh, sweetie, I can't, they'll be like, okay, and they'll know that you really can't.
Yeah.
So say I get a request from one of my friends, I always want to help. And it may not be like, oh, an enthusiastic yes, but I can look and say, okay, is this really going to help her? Am I going to grow? And then I can be like, okay. So there are a lot of ways to say no. I like the gut instinct, first of all. If I want to say no, or I don't think it's going to go well for whatever reason, no. And I like that better even than an enthusiastic yes.
Yeah. And no's a full sentence.
Yeah, because whenever I don't listen, as they say, your gut, to that instinct, to that inner voice, whenever I don't, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
So I kind of use those two things. How do you know when to say no?
I love that, by the way. I've got, like I said, no's a full sentence, and I've actually just gotten better at using the word and not being afraid of it. Okay. Sometimes there's an awkward pause, but most of the time these days, there's respect for that no. I don't need to explain. But I wasn't there straight away. Yeah. So it was things, and it depended on what it was. It would usually be something from a friend. I don't know. That's kind of the beck and call. I mentioned already. I was kind of the beck and call for years, but it was things like, I'm not going to be able to make this today. Didn't explain it, but I'm just not going to be able to make this today. Yeah. And that's people who didn't give a shit about being late. I didn't feel bad about it. Like I was always on time when I met up with them. They were always late, so I was fine with that one. Work tasks, it honestly depended on who and how big and whose work it actually was. Respectfully, I did several people's jobs, but I don't know, I can't remember all my exact articulation, but I found ways of offloading these other people's jobs over time with varying different no's. But I love what you said about literally following your gut. Like I don't remember ever getting told that or how to do it, but there are tells like in how you feel about specific requests. And different things. So it could be shit like in the back of your head. I even hear the word like no, and that's straight channeled. Like, well, then it's no. Fuck it's come out. Or like, I just might, I don't know. So I wouldn't say as far as cold sweats, but it's things like, my temperature rises slightly. Well, I already know that's probably making my asshole crawl. It's a no.
Exactly. So tune into yourself.
Just your body tells you.
The body tells you.
Yeah.
And when you take a breath or a pause, instead of doing that, what's it called? When you do it without thinking, you just say yes automatically. If you take a pause and think and listen to yourself, like you say, your temperature could rise.
Yeah.
You might have a bad flashback and be like, something. Yeah. And then you don't have to answer right away, even if it's going to be a no. Isn't that true?
You said that as well, because when I get a request as well, if I'm not sure what my answer is yet, but I want an immediate, it's I need time to think about it. Let me get back to you. Boom. Yeah, because it gives me time to actually read my own body, but also a little placeholder, and it works every time.
It works every time, and the person who wants to hear back from you appreciates that you're going to think about it.
Exactly.
It's like,
exactly.
Okay.
And you've already set an expectation of respect for your response to that request. So it's a really powerful one.
I mean, and this is so hard. It seems like it's so easy to say no. Kids can say no all the time, but women in general have a harder time. Yes. So I'm so glad you touched onto that and the importance and the power of no. Yeah. And I read something, I think I mentioned the essentialism to you last time about saying no, but also if you don't make decisions about how you spend your time, other people will make them for you.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. And 100%.
That's how no is important. Do you need it? No.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think my advice would be at work, more times than not, to say no, because first of all, people know what you're working on. If it's not directly related to what I've been doing, And it's shame on you for doing other people's jobs. Why are you asking me to do?
Why are you asking me to do that? Yeah.
To me, that's an easy one. Why are you asking me? Because I'm efficient and it looks like I got no.
I'm efficient for my job. You need to be efficient about yours.
So saying no at the home with your family, with your friends, it's okay. And people love you. And, you can say, Mommy has to say no this time because she's tough. And give
Exactly.
me a cuddle and we'll do, don't be afraid to let down your nearest and dearest because that's been my hardest times to say no. You don't want to let down your nearest and dearest.
Yeah. But then if you constantly, I'd add to that, if you're constantly the yes person, you constantly expect, you're expected to be the one there all the time. That's not very respectful. And I found more often than not with the ones that were closest that in terms of meaningful connections, they respect that pretty much every time. It's not as scary as you think. And it's about realigning expectations as, in friendships, family, work, wherever. Have those tough conversations, whether it's with your friends, family, even your colleagues, because people need to understand that you're not responsible for carrying everything or all of their emotional weight. You're not a therapist. You're not a walking Wikipedia of well, I'm going to go with Black history, for example, and you're certainly not a mule who's always expected to carry the burdens of others. I had a conversation, really quick story time. I had a conversation with a friend where I once told her, like, I can't keep being the one who explains things. I need to focus on my own healing and my own mental space. And at first she was a bit hurt by that, but eventually she understood, and we're still friends now. That's fine. That's key. It's about setting clear, loving boundaries so that you don't feel like you constantly have to be the emotional caregiver for everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. I don't know if I told you this story. I'm not even going to tell it. It's going to come up in another episode, I'm sure. So don't worry, because it's going to come up in another episode. I have a meditation for us, though. 5-minute for setting boundaries and with clarity and care. But I don't know if it's time for that yet. I always feel drained at the end of our episodes, don't you? So I'm glad we do the little mindfulness part, because drained not in a bad way. Because as you say, it's good to talk these things out and know it's not just me. And then to see it's happening over here, happening over there, the different ways, different phases of life. Like you say, you were 8 or 9 when that headline shocked you about Stephen's death, murder, I should say. So, I mean, this has been impacting over generations and for decades. Me too. So let's have a meditation, or do you have more?
I had a little bit more, but I'm all right.
Let's do more.
Yeah.
No, because I always want to hear what you say, but now you know where we're going. So we're in with the meditation, but please get us all the way there. No,
I think this is more perfect. And then your meditation right after this will be fantastic. But yeah, just a little extra layer of this, healing from the strong Black woman burden. Yeah, because the healing part, we need to do that. And I want to redefine strength a little bit for us, because it's not about constantly carrying on in the face of exhaustion. We need to figure that one out. Real strength actually comes from choosing rest. Yeah, from embracing vulnerability, and from asking for help when we need it. Like even like the little, just the discussions we just talked about, and resetting boundaries and reaffirming expectations, all different versions of that. And for me, personal again, but I mean, healing actually meant giving myself a permission slip to not be on all the time. And I'm getting better and better at it. It meant recognizing that I'm not defined by what I do for others, but for who I am when I'm alone with myself. Yeah. So real strength actually means resting when you need to and allowing yourself to heal at your own pace. So put your biceps away, ladies.
Yeah, I love
you're not
that.
a machine. Your value's not tied to how much you can give to others. That is now, and it's always been a myth. You're worthy of peace, of healing, and of the time it actually takes to rebuild after those years of emotional labor. And that's literally all I had to say, Adrianne. So
well, no, and that's so powerful, because at least in the starting in the 17th century, I guess, 1600s, when the Europeans wanted to colonize the first nationals that were already living in North America, and then bring chattel and stuff like that. Our female women, our men too, have been tied to what we can produce.
Yeah.
Whether it's out there working the fields, the babies, literally producing the babies, which were property, and then more money just producing milk, because we raised these white women's children. So literally to what we could produce.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding other people's children and then not having any milk for your own child. I mean, that.
Or not even being allowed to feed them if you did.
Mm. And you mentioning, I saw a documentary about how Black women saved the NHS.
Yes.
And some of those Windrush people came over. I remember there was a daughter and a mother. They weren't together, but there was one mother who came over. I guess she had her baby in the UK, but had to work, 12 hours a day or however much, and put her in childcare. And she said the first time she came, that baby was exactly where she had placed her, hadn't been fed, diaper hadn't been changed. She said, I had to send my baby home, back to Jamaica. So then you hear this other child's story, resentment. Her mother was in the UK. She was in Jamaica being raised by her grandmother. It was a huge resentment between that. I don't know if she saw the whole documentary, if that would repair or change that relationship when she saw that sacrifice her mother made. They said, I can't have my baby neglected. My mother will take good care of her. How hard is that to be separated? So just to say, my sisters were brought over from Jamaica, the Caribbean, to save the NHS. It's a society that needed them to save the NHS, but also to erase a society where we weren't going to care for your babies while you're saving our HSS. Why should I be taking care of your baby? Because I'm paying you to, and that's your freaking job.
Yep.
But you're not going to, but we were forced and expected to give our milk. You're not even going to change my baby's diaper. So that whole thing about, yes, rest is resistance. There's a book for that.
There is
ladies.
a book for that. Trisha Hersey.
Read it.
If you're looking for
it's in your library. Yeah, rest is resistance. Rest is essential.
Absolutely.
The body is designed for rest. We know if we don't get enough sleep, our brains can't rinse out like a computer, reset. Our body's chronic disease is tied to a lot of times of not getting proper rest. So make sure you get your rest. And that includes not educating people anymore, right?
Oh, yes. 100%.
So let's have our meditation for boundary. You can turn your camera off if you want. I'm going to close my camera off, but we'll be here. If you're not already in a comfortable position, if you're driving and listening to this, of course, that's fine. If you're driving and listening to this, do not lower your gaze or close your eyes. I don't have to say that, of course. But if you're somewhere where you can, decide if you want to lie down even, and just start focusing on your breathing, your beautiful natural breath. Notice each time how you inhale, the temperature of that air passing through your nostrils. And when you exhale, whether it's through your mouth or your nostrils, feel your body release and soften. And notice the temperature of that exhale. Your breathing right now is the most fascinating thing happening. So access a slow breath in and a steady breath out. Repeat this silently or out loud in your space if you like. It's okay to take up space. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect my energy. It's okay to take up space. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect my energy. Let these words settle into your body. Notice how they feel. Does it feel comfortable claiming this? Does it make me feel scared or uncomfortable? Whatever the feeling, and without judgment, ask yourself, where in my life do I need clearer boundaries? What needs my no? What deserves my yes? Without judgment, ask yourself, where in my life do I need clearer boundaries? What needs my no? And what deserves my yes? You're invited to imagine a soft, steady light glowing in the center of your chest. Let this light represent your clarity and care. A soft, steady light glowing at the center of your chest. Know that this light represents your clarity and care. And as you breathe, this light expands, creating a boundary around you, not a wall, but a gentle perimeter of self-respect. Visualize this boundary. It's strong, yet it's flexible. It's kind, yet it's firm. You decide what enters and you decide what stays. Now, before we go, take these affirmations to heart. Repeat them silently or shout them out loud in your space. I trust myself to set clear boundaries. I release guilt when I honor my needs. I can be kind and firm at the same time. As I repeat them again, let these words settle in. Let your body receive them. I trust myself to set clear boundaries. I release guilt when I honor my needs. I can be kind and firm at the same time. You're invited to return your focus back to your perfect, beautiful breath. Feel the weight of your body where you sit or lie, and wriggle your fingers and toes gently. Maybe take a stretch like a morning stretch. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, open them up. And my hope for you is that you carry this clarity with you through the rest of your day. Was that okay, Kate?
Woo woo! Yes. Oh my God. I can't wait to listen to the published that because I'm going to be doing that a few times.
We're going to be doing that. As you say, this work is a maintenance thing.
Exactly.
So we're going to, always reinforce.
It's on repeat. Always come back to it.
Come back to it. Thank you today for today's powerful lesson, as always. I can't wait to see what you're going to talk about next time.
Yeah, always a privilege. Thank you as well. See you next time.
is Adrianne, and I hope it's been healing.
Bye.
Bye.